Stop for a moment and listen to the truth your ego resists hearing. When you stop chasing someone who doesn't value you, you are not losing anything. You are returning to yourself, and a deeper part of you knows it. Notice your breath right now. It enters, it leaves, and within that rhythm lies a mirror of how you handle love. You inhale, you give, you exhale, you pursue, and you feel suffocated when what you offered does not return. For so long, you have lived under the belief that if you push harder, if you prove more, if you adapt better, the other person will finally see you. But the unconscious does not respond to more effort. It responds to symbols, to energy, to polarities that attract because they are different and collapse when one becomes too dominant. Chasing is exactly that, a forceful pole that devours the entire field, that suffocates mystery, that smothers desire. Here is where everything shifts. When you stop, it isn't indifference, it is alchemy. Pausing reorganizes the invisible field between you and the other. The energy changes place, and with it, the roles are transformed. What you were searching for outside begins to take root within you, and even the gaze of the one who ignored you can suddenly start to feel unsettled. And if not, life itself begins to rearrange in your favor, whether you can see it yet or not. Picture this with me. You wake up one ordinary Tuesday with no rush. That thought that used to bite you now drifts by like a cloud that never quite rains. You no longer stare at your phone as though it were an oracle. You don't delete or rewrite a message 10 times. You don't replay conversations in your head, imagining what you should have said or hidden. That same Tuesday, as the shower water runs down your body, washing away the old salt of effort and longing, something inside you awakens. It isn't arrogance, it isn't revenge, it is an archetype rising. It is the return of the inner king or queen who once gave away their throne to an anxious servant. That throne is your center. The moment you stop chasing, you reclaim it, and even the air in the room shifts because your body remembers what your mind had forgotten. Your value cannot be negotiated with desperate offers. Be precise. What you often call love is nothing more than a projection. The psyche takes fragments from your history, the approving smile of your mother, the silence of your father when you weren't enough, the betrayal of a friend who drained you, and pastes them onto someone else's face. You believe you love that person, but what your unconscious actually loves is the promise of finally repairing a wound that began long before. That is why you chase. You are not chasing them. You are chasing repair. And do you know why that repair slips away every time you get too close? Because the wound cannot heal on the body of another. It heals only when you return to yourself. The day you stop the pursuit, the projected image loses its shine, and for the first time, you see the real face in front of you, with its fears, limits, and emptiness. And at the same time, you see the real face within you, with its dignity, its clarity, its quiet strength. Imagine two magnets. When one rushes in too forcefully, the other withdraws. Attraction cannot survive control. Libido, that ancient word for life energy, thrives in space, in mystery, in the dance where both move and pause in harmony. Chasing breaks the dance. And here lies the essence. When you stop chasing, you are not breaking the bond. You are breaking the spell of the complex that forced you into the same choreography over and over again. A complex is a knot of memory, emotion, and belief that lives in the shadow, directing your actions from behind the curtain. The abandonment complex whispers, if you don't act now, you'll be left again. The inferiority complex murmurs, To be loved, you must prove your worth every single day. When you stop, you challenge the guardian at that door. And when the guardian sees you no longer running, it falters, the knot loosens, and a new silence emerges. If this resonates with the depths of you, listen carefully to the next symbol. A torch in a dark underground passage. That torch is your attention. Wherever you place it, you bring warmth. Wherever you warm, you give life. That is why, when you withdraw your torch from the wrong altar, the person who does not value you, you are not extinguishing your fire. You are carrying it to a more sacred place. And here is another truth rarely spoken aloud. People are drawn to those who carry their own flame, not to those begging for a spark. There is a vast difference between perseverance and pursuit. Perseverance is born of inner abundance. I walk toward you because I have also chosen myself. And if you do not choose me, my light does not dim. Pursuit is born of lack. I run after you to steal from you what I believe I lack. Souls sense the difference without a word. The smile may look kind, the voice may sound sweet, but the field behind reveals desperation. And desperation repels even those who once cared a little. Your torch must return to your own temple. And when you make this invisible gesture, choosing to stop chasing, small synchronicities begin to appear, signs confirming that you are on the right path. A message that no longer unsettles you, an unexpected invitation, a memory surfacing just when you were about to cave, a book falling open to the exact page you needed. This isn't cheap magic, it is the unconscious speaking when you stop forcing it. The unconscious loves rhythm and despises haste. Give it space, and it responds. Suffocate it, and it hides. And in that space, your eyes begin to see more clearly. You realize it was never that they didn't value you, because they didn't know you well enough. It was that you hadn't known yourself deeply enough to set boundaries. Boundaries are not walls, they are ports. They allow in what nourishes and close to what drains. Without boundaries, you attract energy predators or half-asleep souls who want warmth without paying the price of cultivating their own fire. Now ask yourself the hardest question. Who were you really chasing when you chased them? Was it truly them? Or was it a version of yourself you believed you had lost? The version who felt seen, who was unafraid of being intense, creative, sexual, revered. The problem is, you try to recover that version by ripping it from someone else, but it waits for you in your shadow. The shadow is not evil. It is simply what has been denied. Perhaps you denied your healthy pride, your right to expect reciprocity, your right to say no without guilt, your right to stop over-explaining. When you stop chasing, the shadow begins to return pieces to you. A no that comes out naturally, a laugh without shame, the ability to walk away quietly without noise or drama. It surprises you, and it surprises others too. Those who never valued you may become intrigued if they have awareness. If not, they grow angry. They accuse you of being cold, arrogant. That is perfect, because their reactions reveal their level of consciousness. Your task is only to observe and keep walking. Think of the archetype of the hunter. It exists in everyone, regardless of gender. The awakened hunter does not chase out of hunger for validation. They follow tracks with patience. They know the forest. They respect timing. They understand that forcing ruins everything. The sleeping hunter lunges at everything, desperate for results now, and always returns empty-handed. When you stop chasing someone who does not value you, you awaken the lucid hunter. This translates into subtle yet powerful behaviors. You respond when you can, not when fear commands you. You propose from abundance, not from debt. You choose conversations that ignite you, not interrogations that force you to justify yourself. The ones who deserve you will respond to that music. Those who don't will drown in their own silence. And that silence no longer defines you. Let me share with you a secret. Every soul in the process of individuation eventually learns. Love cannot be bought at the cost of your dignity. Individuation is the long journey of becoming who you already were. It demands the sacrifice of the false self that begged for crumbs. When you dare to abandon the role of the beggar, your integrated self appears. No longer a mask designed to please, but a coherent face. Your voice lowers half a tone, your eyes hold for 1 second longer, your body claims its space. You are not doing it to impress anyone. It is simply the natural consequence of choosing not to sell yourself short. And when that happens, something invisible begins to turn. You used to walk into a room searching for someone to admire. Now, you walk in carrying an atmosphere. You once waited for signs. Now, you create them with your very presence. Before, you feared being too difficult. But now you understand that the real difficulty is holding yourself steady at the center while the world tests you. If these words are opening a new space in your mind, share them with someone who needs to hear them. Sometimes we are the mirror that reminds another they can stop running. Let's go deeper. It may feel uncomfortable, but it will be fertile. What do you really gain by chasing someone who does not value you? Intermittent attention. A pattern of inconsistency that hooks you like a slot machine. A message here and there, a lukewarm promise. 1 night of heat, followed by 3 days of cold silence. Intermittence is addictive because the brain hunts for patterns where there is only chaos. You become a decoder of microscopic signals, as if your survival depended on deciphering a hieroglyph, an emoji, a time, a maybe. This shatters your nervous system and disconnects you from your natural rhythm. Stopping the chase is not only psychological therapy, it is also biological therapy. Your pulse returns to you, food tastes better, sleep comes back. Conversations with friends no longer sound like war reports. Everyday life, the same life you dismissed for not being epic, recovers its hidden magic, and within that flow, your magnetism rises without effort. Now let's turn more boldly. When you stop chasing, it's not just you who changes. The entire psychological constellation between you shifts. Carl Jung spoke of how certain bonds activate specific complexes, as though they lit up a particular configuration of the inner sky. In that constellation, one takes the star of power, the other the star of pursuit. When you step away from the pursuit, the constellation either rearranges or collapses. If it collapses, be grateful. That map would never have taken you to harbor. If it rearranges, you will see new behaviors. If there is true love, there will be reciprocity and humility. If it was only narcissistic dependence, you will see rage and manipulation. Either way, the truth comes forward, and that truth is always a gift. Picture yourself walking through an ancient market, stalls covered in fabrics, the scent of cinnamon, voices haggling and laughing. Suddenly, a vendor calls out to you, almost begging. What do you feel? Rejection? Suspicion? Then you notice another stall, quiet, arranged with care, beautiful pieces displayed with elegance. No one shouts. You approach because you want to. You touch the textures. That is what value looks like. Silent, clear, with boundaries. It does not beg, it attracts. It does not persuade, it proposes. Stopping the chase, transforms your stall, how you exhibit your soul. Authentic desire comes because it is free to choose, not because you push. And when it comes, you recognize it, because you too are choosing, not reacting. Ask yourself this and write it on your mirror. Is this movement born from love or from fear? If it is born from fear, it will feel urgent, anxious, full of excuses to escape being with yourself. If it is born from love, it will feel calm, steady, like rain that does not ask permission. Stopping the chase is born from self-love, and from there, something precious happens. You become available again for true seduction, the kind that is not theater, but truth. Conscious seduction is not about making someone need you. It is about embodying a life that makes you necessary to yourself. Whoever chooses you from that place is not looking for a nurse to heal their wounds, but a companion on the path. Your body understands examples better than your mind. Before, you would send a message, and if there was no answer, you sent another, softer, trying to please. Now, you send a clear message with purpose, and if there is no reply, you turn toward your priorities. You don't close your heart, you close the leak. Before, you accepted last-minute plans that destroyed your rhythm and left you resentful. Now, you propose times that honor your schedule, and if they do not align, you thank them and continue. Before, you justified behaviors that hurt you out of fear of losing a chance. Now, you understand that you are the chance. This is not a script. It is the heartbeat of someone who remembers their worth. And believe me, the world responds to those who remember. You may be thinking, if I stop chasing, don't I risk losing it all? Look within. What you can lose was never yours. What truly belongs to you will never demand that you betray yourself. Don't trust promises, trust patterns. Do you feel peace more often than war? Can you be yourself without apologizing? Is there truth? Is there play? Is there tenderness? If yes, the bond strengthens when you choose yourself. If not, your withdrawal is not war. It is self-love. And self-love, in its luminous paradox, is the most erotic force that exists. The body knows this before the mind. It's in the shine of your eyes, the posture of your body, the way you listen. All of it whispers, here is home, or here is hunger. When people feel home, they stay. When they smell hunger, they flee or they exploit. If you are still here, it means you are not like the rest. You are ready to go further. Let's speak of patience. Patience is not waiting without movement. It is moving at the rhythm of the soul. The soul's rhythm is slower than anxiety. Anxiety wants tomorrow. The soul wants forever. Stopping the chase is understanding that what is valuable grows in its own season. In that season, you rediscover your inner authority. You return to your studies, to your art, to your body. You reclaim silence, exercise, reading, the sun, not as distractions from someone, but as reminders that your life cannot fit into the box of their response. And suddenly, sitting at a table with friends, you discover yourself laughing, present, without replaying the old story. That simple moment is an initiation. You've crossed a threshold without noise. Sometimes when you stop chasing, the person who ignored you returns. They come back with new words, sometimes sincere, sometimes strategic. How to know the difference? Watch their congruence. Do their actions support their speech? Do they respect your new rhythm? Do they honor your no? If yes, allow yourself to explore. Your center now knows how to dance without losing itself. If no, remember the mantra, dignity is not negotiable. And if you feel tempted to test them with games, return to the torch symbol. Do not waste fire in labyrinths. Clarity seduces more than any trick. Some will tell you all this is pride. It isn't. Empty pride screams. Real dignity whispers. Pride demands. Dignity proposes. Pride competes. Dignity creates. And when you create from dignity, you attract a kind of bond you've never known. Fewer roller coasters, more deep oceans. Less I need you, more I choose you. Less drama, more intimacy. Intimacy is the great test. Narcissism runs from it. The soul seeks it. If someone does not value you, it is because their inflated ego cannot tolerate intimacy or because their fear speaks too loudly. In either case, it is not your role to educate or to save. It is your role to live standing tall. Try this ritual to seal your understanding. Tomorrow morning, before you look at your phone, place your feet on the ground and whisper, "I return to my center." Then write 3 lines. What will I honor in myself today? What boundary will I protect? What space will I gift myself? At day's end, ask, did my energy rise or fall? If it rose, you are sober with yourself. If it fell, look for the leak, a yes that was really a no, a message that sought confirmation of your existence, a weight that stole your afternoon. Don't judge, just learn. The soul that loves rituals speaks to you through them. In a few weeks, you will notice that the desire that once dragged you has softened into a gentle breeze. And in that breeze, encounters become encounters again, not exams. Maybe your mind asks, what if I end up alone? Loneliness is not a punishment. It is a bridge. In solitude, you can hear the music of your destiny. There, the self, the center larger than your ego, whispers where to go. Some days it asks you to rest, others to create, others to step into a new place, where an unexpected crossing reshapes your map. Synchronicity loves those who move from truth, and when life finds you there, halves will not arrive. Wholes will. And if they don't arrive today, a piece will arrive that you never knew. And from that piece, everything is clearer. I do not want to leave you with cliches, but with a sensation in your chest, the weight of your name spoken by you. Say your name softly right now. Feel its vibration. That sound is a promise not to beg for yourself, a promise not to waste yourself, a promise to be the home you are searching for. If you hold this, those who do not value you will not be able to enter, not because you block them, but because your atmosphere gives them no air. And those who do come will bring good silence, beautiful questions, care without debt. That is always the sign, care without debt. And if you know someone who is chasing a door that never opens, if this truth can spare them years of pain, share it. That is another way to be generous with your fire, to light paths without forcing steps. Before we close, let me say this. Your evolution in seduction is not learning tricks. It is remembering your worth and acting from it. If you want to continue exploring these truths, if you want this space to be a mirror you can return to whenever you almost forget who you are, then stay close. Subscribe, keep coming back, and allow this place to remind you of what your own mind and soul are trying to whisper. Share in the comments what you discovered today about your shadow, about the limits you once thought were unbreakable, about the patterns that quietly shape your choices. Your voice might become the mirror someone else desperately needs to see themselves more clearly. And if this message gave you even a brief moment of relief, then pass it on. Not because of some algorithm, but because when a truth is shared, it gathers weight, it takes root, and it becomes part of the living fabric of this world. So now, let's breathe together once again. Feel the air entering, filling you with presence, and feel it leaving, carrying away, with every exhale, a layer of burden that was never really yours. With each breath, you return closer to your essence. If you make the choice to stop chasing those who do not value you, your world does not shrink. It aligns. The space around you does not collapse. It rearranges itself so that your path becomes clearer, more honest, and more alive. What is meant for you always finds its way more easily when you are rooted in your own center. And your center is not something that can be negotiated, bargained, or sacrificed. It is the ground where your being stands, the inner flame that no one else can carry for you. Keep your torch with you always, and wherever you decide to place it, life will flourish. Wherever you choose to hide it, there will only be hunger and emptiness. So choose life. Choose to carry your flame openly, even if the world sometimes feels cold. And remember this: whatever you let go of with dignity will always return to you in a transformed way, or it will never return at all. But in either case, you do not lose, you win. If it comes back renewed, aligned with who you truly are now. And if it does not, it means it was never yours to carry. And in letting it go, you free yourself from chains that only weighed you down. Both ways, you gain strength, you gain clarity, you gain life. Carl Jung once said that true growth begins the moment we stop living under the expectations of others. And it's only when you break free from that silent craving for approval that something inside you begins to shift. It's not sudden or loud. It's subtle, like a tide slowly returning to the shore. Your energy, once directed outward in a desperate search for validation, slowly starts to come back to you. And when that happens, it feels as though, for the first time, you're coming home to yourself. For so long, you've lived through the eyes of others. You carefully chose the right words, the most acceptable gestures, the softest tone. You stayed quiet at the exact moment you wanted to speak, all to avoid discomfort. For them, not for you. And in the process, piece by piece, you lost yourself. You drifted away from what you truly think, feel, and need. Until one day, something within you cracks. And in that moment, you realize you can no longer pretend. You can't keep giving yourself in fragments. You can't keep wearing a mask to belong in a world that doesn't even see the real you. And then, something powerful happens. You stop trying to please. Not with an outburst, not with a scene, but with a quiet decision. I'm done. And in that silent act begins your real liberation. You start to become clearer, lighter, more transparent, more you. You no longer tailor your opinions to be accepted, nor do you hide your sensitivity out of fear that it will be seen as weakness. You stop maintaining connections out of obligation or habit. You begin to choose yourself, not from a place of selfishness, but from a deep respect for your own energy. You no longer need to be the strong one all the time, the pleasant one, the one who understands everyone else, the one who never makes waves. You begin to honor your discomfort, your exhaustion, your truth. And by doing so, you start clearing away all the things you built from a fear of rejection. Your way of relating to the world changes. Some people drift away, others look at you with confusion. Not because you've become someone else, but because you're finally showing up as your true self, without filters. And those who only valued you when you were compliant now struggle to understand the version of you that sets boundaries. But you don't go back. You've already tasted the peace that comes with being unapologetically yourself. And once you've felt that, everything else starts to feel unnecessary. you no longer explain yourself. You stop trying to convince anyone why you're not the same person who tolerated everything. Your presence becomes enough. And in that enoughness, you discover a new kind of strength, the strength of authenticity. What once hurt because you feared disappointing others now becomes your compass. You learn to say no without guilt. You learn to walk away without providing explanations. You learn to protect your energy without feeling bad for doing so. And surprisingly, instead of losing yourself in this process, you finally find yourself. Because beneath the endless effort to be liked was the most honest version of you, the one that doesn't strive for perfection, but seeks truth. That version begins to rise when you stop living for approval. And when that happens, your entire energy begins to shift. You stop attracting what demands you to shrink and adapt. Instead, you begin to draw in what resonates with your essence. And from that moment on, your entire life starts to rearrange itself. Conversations become more genuine. Silences become more comfortable. Decisions become lighter. You no longer choose based on what others want. You choose based on your inner alignment. And that kind of alignment is magnetic. It doesn't shout, but it speaks volumes. It doesn't push, but it transforms. Your presence begins to carry a different frequency, not because you're louder or more dramatic, but because there's a quiet peace in you that wasn't there before. A calm that doesn't come from being understood, but from understanding yourself. When you break free from the need to please, you also free yourself from the inner pressure to always be the one who's right. You allow yourself to not have all the answers. You give yourself permission to stumble. You give yourself permission to feel. And all of that becomes part of your humanity. The more you choose yourself, the sharper your intuition becomes. You begin to just know, without overthinking, what feels right and what doesn't, who belongs in your life and who doesn't, where you're meant to go and where you no longer need to stay. Because now, your energy, no longer consumed by pleasing others, begins to clear, to focus, and that clarity becomes your guide. It protects you, it empowers you, and most importantly, it sets you free. When your energy is no longer focused on fitting in, it begins to root itself in what truly matters. You stop needing to be everywhere, to say yes to every invitation, to maintain relationships that drain you just because of emotional loyalty. You start choosing silence when there's no truth, distance when there's no reciprocity, solitude when your surroundings no longer reflect who you are, and all the things that used to bring you guilt, the fear of being judged, of being misunderstood, now feel like self-care. You stop needing others to understand you in order to feel valid, because now you understand yourself. That inner understanding becomes your refuge. You no longer act out of habit, or say yes out of duty, or smile just to keep the peace. And in this new way of being, you don't become cold or distant. You become whole. When you begin to live from a place of honesty, even if that honesty makes things uncomfortable at times, even if it unsettles others, you start to realize something profound. That discomfort isn't rejection, it's purification. It's life's way of cleaning your energetic space, removing everything that was only there because you were trying to be liked. You see, for so long, you pushed yourself to fit in, to be accepted, to be pleasing. But now, without that effort, what remains is far more real. It's more conscious, more aligned with who you truly are. And when that happens, something unexpected takes place. You begin to feel lighter, not because life has suddenly become easier or devoid of problems, but because you finally stopped carrying what was never yours to bear. The masks, the roles, the carefully edited versions of yourself start falling away, one by one. And beneath all of it, there's a voice that starts to emerge with clarity. That voice is yours. It's no longer muffled, no longer hidden behind layers of performance or expectation. It speaks, not to please, but to express truth. You stop negotiating your truth for approval. You stop sacrificing your peace just to feel like you belong. You no longer shrink yourself to fit into molds that never truly held you. The exhausting effort to maintain a perfect image fades away because you've finally seen through the illusion. That perfection was never real to begin with. It was a mask, a lie, a performance. And now, authenticity takes its rightful place. The trembling voice that speaks honestly, the tired eyes that no longer hide behind filters, the new boundaries you've set, boundaries that sometimes ache, but that hold you up. These are now the things that matter. You don't live to be liked anymore. You live to be someone you don't have to betray. And in that daily decision, even when it's uncomfortable, you begin to recognize yourself. You start to reclaim everything you once put on hold just to be accepted. Your creativity, your intuition, your energy. These parts of you finally find room to breathe. They flourish. Because the moment you stop living to meet expectations is the moment your inner world begins to shift. Your vibration changes, not on the surface, but deep at the root. When you live to please, your energy contracts. You become smaller. But when you live from authenticity, everything in you expands. And while that expansion might not always be visible to others, inside, it reshapes everything. You begin to inhabit yourself more deeply. You take up space in the world without apology. You speak from the soul, even if your voice isn't the loudest in the room, because now you understand that your truth doesn't need to scream to be valid. It only needs to be lived. And as you live it, your energy changes. It becomes more grounded, more magnetic, more selective. Not from a place of separation, but from a place of clarity. You stop begging for affection. You no longer confuse being accepted with being loved. You stop needing to be chosen because you've finally chosen yourself. And from that place, everything starts to change. The way you look at life, the way you relate to others, the peace you feel in spaces that used to disturb your spirit. You begin to realize that you don't have to fill every silence with noise, nor explain every choice, nor justify your absence. Because when you live in truth, there's no longer a need to seek validation to feel worthy. Living this way isn't always comfortable, but it is light. And in this new way of being, the world begins to respond differently. You're no longer projecting need. You're radiating presence, and it's in that presence where everything begins to fall into place. Your relationships, your decisions, your path. Not because you've mastered the art of being liked, but because you've stopped abandoning yourself to be loved. And that right there, is the highest form of love you can give to yourself. From that place, your life starts to feel more real, not perfect, not free of hardship, but deeply, unapologetically yours. You're no longer chasing after what doesn't see you. You're no longer fighting to be understood by those unwilling to listen. You start accepting that not everyone will resonate with you. And that's okay. Your worth no longer depends on fitting in. It's rooted in staying loyal to the person you're becoming. Even your silences begin to shift. They used to be heavy, filled with doubt, plagued by the anxiety that you might be doing something wrong. But now, your silences are sacred. They are moments of listening to yourself, of breathing, of making choices untainted by the weight of other people's expectations, and the things you once feared, judgment, rejection, loneliness, begin to lose their grip, not because they disappear from the world, but because they no longer have control over you. You've stopped needing to be an acceptable version of yourself to feel loved. That, in itself, is a quiet revolution. You no longer live with the chronic fear of disappointing others. Now, you live with the unwavering commitment to never abandon yourself again. And from that inner shift, your entire path transforms. Even your relationship with time begins to change. You're no longer obsessed with doing everything quickly, with responding instantly, with keeping up dynamics that drain you, all in the name of not letting others down. Now, you honor your own rhythm, and you discover that your pace is slower, but deeper. It's more present, more intentional. The emotional urgencies that once ruled your life begin to dissolve. You no longer feel responsible for fixing everything, for saving everyone, for explaining every move you make. You come to realize that so often, the need to please was just a disguise, a way to control outcomes, to make sure people didn't leave, didn't get angry, didn't change their view of you. But now, you prefer freedom over perfection. You choose authenticity, even if that means not everyone stays. And in that brave decision, you uncover a profound truth. What leaves you when you stop pretending was never truly yours. The time you once spent maintaining appearances, you now invest in knowing yourself, caring for yourself, and creating from a place of truth. And when that time transforms into inner space, you begin to experience a peace you've never known before. Not because everything is fixed, but because you are finally walking your path without self-betrayal. And within that new inner space, everything begins to transform, especially your definitions of what success means, what it means to connect, and what love truly is. You no longer chase relationships to fill emotional voids. Instead, you seek connections that honor your essence. You stop doing things just to impress others and start doing them because they resonate with you on a deeper level. You begin to live with more coherence rather than out of obligation, and that shift changes your entire energetic frequency in profound ways. Your anxiety diminishes. The inner pressure to constantly prove yourself fades, making room for a softer kind of certainty, a stability that no longer relies on external achievements or validation. The mental noise grows quieter because you've stopped negotiating your worth. You speak to yourself differently. You look at yourself through a more compassionate lens. And most importantly, you behave differently, with greater integrity, with clarity, with calm. You come to realize that what once felt essential really wasn't, that the masks you wore cost more than they helped, that constantly trying to be likable comes at a price, one too high to pay when the cost is losing yourself. Living without the need to please doesn't mean you isolate yourself. It means you live from such a grounded center that you no longer twist and bend yourself to be loved, nor do you break yourself just to be understood. You finally understand that those who can truly see you as you are the only ones who deserve to stay. And everything else? You let it go, without fear, because your sense of completeness no longer depends on anything or anyone outside of you. You now reside in your truth, and that alone is enough. And from that place of truth, what once felt like a burden becomes effortless. You no longer overthink what to say or how to act, because now you simply are. From that place, authenticity begins to flow. Decisions become clearer. Relationships grow deeper and more nourishing. Your energy stabilizes. Not because life suddenly becomes easy, but because you've stopped making it more complicated by trying to please everyone. You discover that the moment you begin to respect yourself, the world around you begins to reorganize itself. What no longer vibrates with your essence naturally drifts away without conflict. What does resonate finds its way to you without resistance. And in that quiet, gentle process, you begin to build a lighter life. The people who remain in your life aren't there for the image you project. They stay because of who you truly are. And that is real freedom. Because in your authenticity, you are no longer forced to hold on to anything that isn't real. Only what is born from the depths of your being is worth sustaining. Even your way of setting boundaries begins to change. You no longer do it from a place of anger or defensiveness, but from a place of clarity. You don't need to argue, to prove, or to explain. You've come to understand that your energy is not available for everything, nor should it be. And every time you choose peace over the desperate need for validation, your soul becomes a little stronger. It's as if an ancient part of you, one that was always trying to adapt, to conform, finally begins to rest, to trust, to remember that you were never meant to be approved by all, but to be true to yourself. And when you rest in that truth, you no longer feel the constant urge to look outside yourself for answers. You begin to trust your own perceptions, your body, your intuition. You realize that what you once called doubt was often your soul speaking to you. Only you kept silencing it out of fear of being rejected. But now you listen. And each time you choose what feels real, even if it's uncomfortable, you reaffirm your path. You reclaim your space. You reclaim your energy. And in that silent coherence, you find liberation. That kind of liberation doesn't need to be shouted. It's felt. It's in the way you walk through life, without apologizing for your existence, without dragging emotional chains behind you, without shrinking yourself to keep others comfortable. And then something truly beautiful happens. Your mere presence begins to become healing, not because of what you do, but because of what you embody. Someone who has stopped living to be liked becomes a light, a beacon, for those still lost in the noise. Your authenticity becomes a mirror, a vibration that calls others to remember who they are too. And in that, you inspire, not by force, but by example. Because you are no longer at war with yourself. You are at home within. And that shows in everything. Another deep change that takes place when you stop living to please others is that your creative energy returns to you. For years, that energy had been invested in trying to fit in analyzing how to behave, in guessing what others expected of you. But now, all of that power flows back, and what once felt like anxiety transforms into momentum. Momentum to express, to create, to live without asking for permission. You discover you don't need to be perfect to share what lives inside you. You're no longer paralyzed by the fear of judgment, because what you create now comes from your soul. And when something is born from that sacred space, its value can never be determined by outside approval. Your creativity no longer serves the purpose of pleasing others. It now serves the purpose of expanding you, of building a life that reflects your truth, even if it looks nothing like anyone else. You begin to experience what it's like to act without fear of making mistakes. You start to make decisions without desperately seeking approval. You speak your mind without dressing up your words for comfort. And all of that doesn't just give you freedom, it brings you back to life. Because trying to please others is exhausting, but being true to yourself is like taking a deep, healing breath. Every time you choose to create, speak, or move from a place of truth, your truth, instead of from what others expect, you're sending a powerful, clear signal to the universe. I am here, as I am. You no longer live to uphold an image. You begin to live from your essence, that part of you that was buried beneath the masks you've worn for so long. Now, that essence begins to rise to the surface. It finds its way into your voice, your silences, your choices, and even in the quiet energy you carry without saying a single word. And that's when life starts to take on a deeper meaning. There's no need to do more. You simply need to be. And in a world obsessed with appearances and perfection, being raw and unfiltered is a revolutionary act. When your essence blooms without distortion, your mere presence becomes a message in itself. You no longer have to explain why you choose what you choose. You don't owe anyone apologies for the boundaries you've drawn. You no longer dim your light for the comfort of those who aren't ready to see it. Everything in you becomes more real. Your gaze becomes clearer, your words more sincere, your actions more aligned with your values. And that shift sends out a different kind of frequency. People no longer respond to the mask you used to wear. They respond to your truth, to the energy of someone who has come home to themselves. And with that shift, something inevitable begins to happen. Things fall apart. Relationships that only existed because you kept pretending to be someone you weren't begin to fade. Situations that relied on your silence begin to unravel. Dynamics that demanded your constant sacrifice to remain afloat collapse. And even if it hurts, you're grateful because you know deep down that anything that falls when you finally choose to be yourself was never really yours to begin with. And in the rubble of what once was, a new kind of peace begins to rise. Not a peace made of fake smiles and surface-level calm, but a deep, unshakable peace. The kind that comes when your thoughts, feelings, and actions are no longer at war. The kind that comes when every part of you finally exists in the same place, moving in the same direction. Living this way isn't easy, but it is real. And in that reality, there is a sacred weight. It anchors you. It strengthens your steps. It gives you the courage to say, "This is who I am." And if that's not enough for someone, then that's okay. Because for the first time, it's enough for you. Those words don't come from pride. They come from maturity. From the understanding that being loyal to yourself is not something you're willing to compromise anymore. And whatever price you pay for being true to yourself, it's always lighter than the burden of betraying your own soul. In that moment of inner maturity, something profound happens. Your energy stabilizes. Before, your inner state could be thrown off balance by a cold glance, a disapproving tone, or by not receiving the response you were hoping for. Your emotions were constantly at the mercy of others, but not anymore. Because when you stop living to please, your center no longer lives outside of you. It lives within you. You become your own reference point, and that gives you a sense of peace nothing else can replace. You finally understand that you don't need to hold up anything that isn't real. You begin to nurture relationships that don't require you to edit yourself. Bonds where you can breathe fully, where you don't have to hide your shadows or dilute your emotions just to fit in. And from that raw, honest space, you begin to create new ways of existing in the world. Softer, quieter, but stronger, more grounded, more true. You start to find yourself in places where before you were just trying to survive. Now you're breathing deeper, speaking more clearly, walking with the exact weight of who you are. No more, no less. You owe nothing to appearances anymore, because the validation you once thought you needed, you've outgrown it. You now know that the only validation that truly sustains your path is the one that comes from within, the one that arises every time you choose not to abandon yourself. And that loyalty to yourself, it shows up in everything, in the way you say no, in the way you choose yourself day after day, in the way you stay where your energy feels expansive, and in the way you walk away from any space that no longer fits the fullness of who you are. Even if that means walking alone sometimes, the solitude is no longer a punishment. It becomes a sacred space, a temple, a place where your soul is finally heard, where your truth is no longer up for negotiation. Thank you for staying until the end. If you felt that this message echoed within you, deep in the places where your soul lives, that's not a coincidence. You're standing at a pivotal point on your journey, one where pretending is no longer sustainable, one where your spirit is demanding space to exist without masks, without needing permission, without trying to please. Carl Jung once said that the most terrifying thing for a human being is to fully accept themselves, but it's also the most liberating. And if you've already begun to walk that path, even with trembling steps, you're closer to yourself than you've ever been. Remember this: you didn't come into this world to maintain an image others wanted to see. You came here to embody your truth with courage. And every single time you choose not to betray yourself, you're healing. You're waking up. If this message accompanied you, if it reminded you of who you are when no one else is watching, I invite you to keep walking this path with us. Subscribe to the channel. Every word shared here is meant to nourish your growth, expand your awareness, and remind you you're not alone. We'll meet again in the next one. I'm going to tell you an uncomfortable truth, one that perhaps no one has ever dared to put right in front of you. As long as you search for love with desperation, love will flee from you with the same desperation. It isn't because the universe is cruel, but because whatever you chase with hunger is translated by your psyche as lack, and lack is always registered as danger. Picture this for a moment. You step into a silent room, you close the door, and for the first time in a long while, you don't carry your phone with you. There is no music, no notifications, no promises of tomorrow, just you and the sound of your own breathing. At first, it feels unbearable. After a minute, your body begs you to open the door, to call someone, to send a quick "I'm fine" message just to feel connected. But if you resist, if you allow yourself to endure that first wave of restlessness, you begin to hear something faint, almost like a soft crackling sound coming from behind the walls. That sound is your soul stretching awake, and this is where the real work begins. Learning to be alone is not a punishment. It is the hidden passage toward what Carl Jung called individuation, the intimate journey back to your own center. And here is the twist no one ever told you. When you start walking toward yourself, love begins to walk toward you too. The solitude I am speaking about is not the same as the gnawing emptiness that bites at you in the middle of the night when you stare at the ceiling, wondering if anyone truly knows who you are. That is abandonment. Transformative solitude has a different temperature. It is like a warm and serious room without decorations, where you sit down face to face with the eyes of who you are and who you have been. Jung said that what we do not make conscious appears in our lives as fate. How many times have you mistaken fate for a repeated pattern? You live the same story with different names. You fall in love with the same archetype disguised in new clothing. The rescuer, the pursuer, the distant one, the unreachable one. You tell yourself, this time it will be different. But inside, you carry the same script, and the script dictates the story. When you sit with yourself in honesty, the script becomes audible. You hear the ancient voices of maternal or paternal complexes whispering, be excessively good so they won't abandon you. Keep your distance so you won't be trapped. Prove your worth or you will be discarded. Those sentences were not born with you, but they live within you. They operate as invisible filters, turning your dates into exams, your silences into threats, your gestures into arguments with ghosts. And because you cannot see them, you project them outward. You project onto him, onto her, your need to be saved, admired, chosen. Those who carry the weight of your projection can feel it. Some stay for a while, but eventually they leave, because no one can carry for long what your own soul refuses to hold. Here lies one of Jung's most uncomfortable truths. You do not fall in love with the person standing before you, but with the image of your own inner world. You create a figure, anima or animus, and paste it over their real face. You see light where there are shadows, and later you blame shadows in places where there was also light. But when you learn to be alone, you begin to carefully remove those projections, like peeling a photograph away from glass. You discover that part of what you called love was hunger, and another part was fear. And when you see that clearly, something inside you regains dignity. You stop asking another person to complete you as if you were a broken vessel, and instead you begin to see yourself as the craftsman who repairs with gold the cracks of your own being. Do you know the Japanese art of kintsugi, where broken pottery is mended with golden seams? To release the desperate chase for love does not make you cynical, it makes you an artisan of your own soul. Each crack you touch in solitude becomes a golden thread that holds you together. If what I am saying is resonating in the deepest part of you, stay with me, because what comes next may change the way you understand yourself. Imagine now that you are dreaming. You walk through a forest and find an old house. From the outside, it looks abandoned. You push the door, it creaks. The smell is of wood and ancient rain. You light candles as you move from room to room. In the last room, there is a single chair in front of a fogged mirror. You wipe the mirror, and instead of seeing your reflection, you see the faces of every person you ever chased with desperation. Each face is holding silently something that once belonged to you. Your expectations, your fear of solitude, your hunger to be validated. And you realize you never truly asked them for love. You asked them to do a job that was always yours. That house is the house of the soul. Dreams speak in symbols because direct language frightens our defenses, and Jung trusted this symbolic grammar. Conscious solitude is, in many ways, the act of living inside that house with the lights turned on. You don't drive anyone away, but you do take back the weight you had placed on them. It is both simple and fierce. There is a kind of alchemy that begins the moment you choose to be alone. The first stage is the nigredo, the blackening, where everything old begins to decompose. You feel clumsy, sad, even bored. It is the I don't know who I am if I am not chasing. It is the what do I do with my hands if I am not writing and rewriting messages. Allow the nigredo. In that heat, The lead of old habits softens. After that comes a quiet clarity, the albedo, the whitening. It is not euphoria, it is cleansing. Spaces that used to be filled with urgencies now become open. At first, the emptiness terrifies you, but then you baptize it as space. Space to read a symbol, to listen to your breathing, to ask yourself with respect, what is my life truly asking of me beyond the need to be chosen by someone else? And if you remain long enough, the rubido arrives, the reddening, the stage of passion that no longer seeks to devour, but to give. And when you begin to give from that place, something strange happens. Your very presence begins to have weight. It becomes like gravity. And gravity does not chase, it attracts. If this truth is opening a new space in your mind, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Not for me, but for you. Because teaching something you are beginning to embody carves it deeper into your own flesh, and it is through embodiment that wisdom becomes real. I want you to picture concrete scenes. Someone used to stay up late, checking who had viewed their stories. They uploaded pictures not out of joy, but out of strategy. If they see that I'm fine, they will come back. That sentence felt like a pin pressed into the chest. One night, they chose to do something radical. They turned off the screen at 10, left the phone in another room, and sat on the floor, back straight, hands resting on the legs. 10 minutes, not to meditate perfectly, but simply not to listen. Silent tears came, not out of sadness, but out of abstinence. In that small daily renunciation, an old voice began to surface. If no one looks at you, you don't exist. It was the child who learned to smile as currency, who tried never to upset anyone. The adult spoke to that child. Yes, they whispered softly, the way you speak to a frightened animal. I am here. I see you, even if no one else does. 2 weeks later, they posted things, just because. A month later, they left a message unanswered, not as a strategy, but because they were cooking, and the source needed attention. Attention finally returned to its rightful place, and as if the world sensed it, new gazes appeared. Not more, but better. Not because the universe rewards, but because energy that does not beg shines differently. Another person lived with the pursuer's pattern, calling twice, 3 times, always justifying. I insist because I care. That insistence was only fear of being invisible. In inner work, an image arose, a dog barking inside an empty house. So much noise, but no one within. A symbolic experiment was suggested. Place a chair in front of you and sit on the other. Imagine the part of you that insists is sitting there. Ask it what it fears. If I don't chase, they forget me. And who forgot you first? Silence followed, long and heavy. Memories surfaced of a moment when someone important never arrived, when presence was promised and never given. That echo lived behind every constant message sent in panic. It wasn't about stopping communication. It was about writing from a different inner room. Gradually, time was allowed its time. A miracle, not rhythm, but the rhythm of someone no longer chasing behind a closed door. One day came gratitude from the other side. Thank you for not pressuring me. You give me peace. Reading it brought a smile. There was no strategy. There was presence. And presence, again and again, attracts. Another story spoke of confusion between tenderness and fusion. The fear that if I'm not attached, I'll be lost. The training began in solitude, walking without music at dusk for half an hour, observing the trees as if they were ancient. Nature is a silent therapist. It teaches the correct distance between things. No tree pushes another to grow. None begs for light. They search for their place, root deeply, and wait for rain without pleading. Roots began to be placed at home too. A plant, a warm lamp, a notebook. At the end of the day, one sentence was written: "Today, I did not betray myself." Sometimes it was small. I said no, even though I trembled. Sometimes it was immense. I didn't return to someone who loved me halfway. What sustained the change was not an idea. Ideas vanish like mist. It was rituals. Rituals gave shape to a new identity. Something subtler happens when you choose solitude. The world begins to speak in synchronicities. They are not magical signs to save you from the effort. They are winks confirming the path. You think of reaching out to someone, and instead of doing so, you breathe. Hours later, that person writes. It is not witchcraft, but meaningful coincidence. The psyche and the world share the same background, and when your noise quiets, you hear the shared music. You no longer use synchronicities as crutches to feed old hunger. You receive them as bells that say, "Keep going." That's where the difference lies. One way of needing uses symbols to escape emptiness. The other uses symbols to sustain oneself within. The first makes you lose yourself. The second helps you find yourself. Let's touch a delicate corner. The fear that if I stop searching, no one will come. That fear is logical. If early experience taught you, if I don't cry out, no one hears me. But you are no longer that child. And here the psyche is generous. It allows you to rewrite not the past itself, but the bond you now hold with that past. Just as the body learns new movements, the soul learns new postures. The posture of someone who rests in themselves is not arrogant, but humble as a mountain. Jung did not propose an inflated self, but a self inclined toward the deeper self, that totality that exceeds you and sustains you at the same time. When you align with that current, a physical phenomenon occurs. You begin to occupy your rightful place. In a room, you no longer shrink nor overexpand. You look into eyes without invading, listen without vanishing. Curiously, that is seductive. It is because it transmits something rare: quiet security. The kind of security that does not promise, "I will never leave you," but instead promises, "I will not leave myself." Whoever hears this, even without words, feels it in the body, and the body trusts. If you're still here, it means you're not like the rest, and you're ready to go further. Not because you're special on social media, but because you chose to stay in a place where many would have left. And what happens in concrete terms when you learn to be alone and stop chasing love desperately? What happens is that your energy stops vibrating like a question and begins vibrating like an answer. Before, you were a walking interrogation. Am I enough? Will I be chosen? Now you embody silent affirmations. I can sustain myself. I can choose. That doesn't mean overwhelming others with your self-sufficiency. It means being kind with your desire, not enslaved by it. You begin to speak with clarity. I like you. I'm not in a rush. You begin to say no before entangling yourself, before cutting ties abruptly. You start feeling your body as an ally. If something in you shrinks each time that person appears, that contraction becomes information, not condemnation. Trained solitude awakens sensitivity. I want to give you a Jungian practice that doesn't sound modern, but works with surgical precision. Active imagination. It's not fantasy, but dialogue with the inner figures inhabiting you. If every time someone delays in responding, a part of you panics, give it a face, seat it before you. Ask not, "Why do you do this?" but "What are you trying to protect?" Listen. Then introduce another figure, your present adult, the one who knows how to cook, pay bills, and stop before humiliating. Ask that adult to speak. Allow the dialogue to last as long as needed. At the end, breathe and write 3 sentences. What did I learn? What do I promise? And what do I stop promising? This repeated scene changes the architecture of desire, from begging into meeting. Another practice, silence vigil. 15 minutes daily without stimuli. Sitting, eyes open, not to meditate perfectly, but to tolerate your heartbeat without anesthetics. The psyche confuses emptiness with danger only until you inhabit it. Once you do, you discover it was space, and space broadens the gaze. Where once you saw only, either I'm chosen or I'm lost, now middle paths emerge. You can meet someone without pausing your life. You can enjoy interest without mortgaging your dignity. You can step back on time without turning it into tragedy. That is emotional maturity, and few things are more attractive than someone who knows and cares for themselves. Feel this in your skin. Stopping the desperate search doesn't mean turning to stone. It doesn't make you unreachable. It makes you clear. Clarity opens and closes doors without noise. If someone writes at 3 in the morning, you answer when your morning begins. Not because you're playing, but because you sleep well. If someone shows up only when lonely, you notice it without rage. You set boundaries that take the shape of self-love. Today, I can't. I'd rather meet another day. What you propose doesn't align with me. Speaking like this doesn't scare away those who matter. It calls them in. It calls those who vibrate with the rhythm of reciprocity. And with time, something deeper unfolds. You become interesting to yourself. You discover passions you didn't know existed because you were always too busy chasing. Books appear that pierce through you, walks that cleanse you, projects that awaken something burning in your chest. Life is no longer a waiting room for love. It becomes a journey. And when love arrives, because it does not come as a machine that keeps you breathing. It sits beside you as a fellow traveler. You no longer say, I need you to live. You say, how beautiful it is that you are here. And that phrase carries a fragrance the other instantly recognizes. Freedom with commitment. Commitment without chains. That combination is rare, and that is why it draws people in. Maybe you ask yourself, what if it never comes? That never is a monster living in the hallway of fear. It makes you believe that if you do not accept crumbs, you will be left without bread. But trained solitude teaches you how to bake. And when you learn how to bake, the table never remains empty. It is filled in different ways. Sometimes with romantic love, sometimes with deep friendships, sometimes with a work that outlives you. And in all those cases, you are not alone, because real loneliness is not the absence of others. It is the absence of yourself in your own life. If you are present, then you are no longer alone. Let me return to the forest for a moment. You come back to the house. This time, you bring flowers and a warm cup in your hands. You sit in front of the mirror, and now, finally, you see yourself. Not the exhausted mask, not the persona you built to survive, but something deeper. You do not applaud yourself or condemn yourself. You simply hold your own gaze. You whisper, I return to myself. That tiny act shifts the entire map. You walk to the door, and as you step outside, you hear footsteps. You did not chase them. They arrived. Now listen to this with tenderness, but without anesthesia. If after all of this, you feel your body telling you to run, then run inward. Run to a piece of paper and write down the 3 relationships where you lost yourself the most. Search for the pattern, give it a name. The pursuer, the mother, the weary hero. Thank them for what they taught you, return what was never yours, and make yourself a simple promise, the kind you can actually keep. I will not abandon myself for love. Signing it softly in front of a candle is enough. The psyche respects rituals, and listen carefully to the small reminders I asked you to keep close as you walk through this stage. If this is resonating deep within you, stay, because what comes next might change how you understand yourself. If this truth is opening a new space in your mind, share it with someone who needs to hear it. If you are still here, it means you are not like the rest. You are ready to go further. These are not phrases meant for decoration. They are keys. Use them when fear tries to drag you back into the old ways. Before closing, let me give you one last frame, one that, if you let it enter, will remain with you for a very long time. Love is not something you chase, it is something you summon. How? With a life worth sharing. Conscious solitude does not isolate you, it tunes you. You refine your instrument until your music no longer sounds like pleading, but like a song. And those who vibrate with that melody arrive without you having to shout. And if no one arrives today, the music does not vanish. It continues, and in that steady flow, in that quiet continuity, you become magnetic, not because you want to attract, but because you radiate. If you have felt the pull of this conversation, do something tangible right now to seal this movement. Turn off your phone half an hour before sleeping. Sit on the floor, breathe, and ask yourself, what do I need from me that I have been looking for outside? Write down the first answer, even if it hurts, and take the smallest step possible today in that direction. No heroics, just soft constancy. That is the lever that moves worlds. I want to end as I began, but with another melody. The day you learn to be alone does not become grey. It becomes whole. You do not lose love. You stop losing yourself in its name. And from that place, when someone looks at you, they will not see a hungry pit. They will see a calm lake, alive, deep. Those who have learned how to look will stay. Those still running will continue their race. Meanwhile, you will have found something greater than a partner. You will have found your axis, and that axis is never bargained with. It is honored. If you wish to keep refining this presence that does not beg, that draws others simply by being grounded, then nurture it. Every time you choose to feed yourself with words, thoughts, and content that elevate you, you also choose the version of yourself that refuses to settle for half-loves. And without even realizing it, that makes you irresistibly fully you.